Hi, how are you? Welcome back to The Sweat. It is Tuesday. She is Jessie. Sorry I'm turning my back to you. I just want to talk to the audience here. I'm Emerson. So if you are here looking for fantastic sports betting advice, fantasy advice, maybe even love, you've come to the right place, Jessie.
No, this isn't the Bachelor in Paradise. We'll get you taken care of on the baseball side, including Twins pitcher Kyle Gibson. He's going to join the program. He joined you.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff. I don't know what they're including in what you're going to see here, but it's going to be good.
Plus, we have Donovan McNabb one-on-one with Adam Coffin from the DraftKings Kickoff Bash. We're going to have a little bit of that in there. What else? Tonight's football panel, though. Let's get started with that.
I would love to introduce them.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's go. DK Live's Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, and the fantasy girl, Rosalie Michaels.
Let's react to Monday Night Football's biggest storylines and their fantasy impact, shall we? A little segment we like to call NFL Hangover. The Saints beating Houston, right? On a last-second field goal. The last 2 minutes of this game was a thing of beauty, Coffield, unless you're a Texans fan.
Regia.
Yeah, Tom Ridgey, one of our producers in the back.
So sorry.
Loser. Drew Brees, though, delivering 25 DK fantasy points. Will we be seeing Brees sling the ball more this season, Reed, or was this just about like a game script? Because we were talking about a run-heavy team all last season.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier. They were the 5th highest in run play percentage when you look at the total full 16-game season last year. And this was partly because, yes, game script allowed it to be more pass heavy. They needed to move the ball down the field and score quickly. But I also think this is part and parcel of him also being at home in the Dome. We always see him pass more in the Dome. When they're on the road, he's a little, he kind of has a low-key, like Ben Roethlisberger, home road splits. We see a lot more run when he's on the road. And this high implied game total against the Rams, we'll probably see it increase just a little bit. But yeah, I can expect that we'll see more of this than the sort of less pass heavy, more run heavy with the Saints moving forward.
All right, Rosalie, where do you sit on this? I mean, no Mark Ingram. We see the way they're kind of handling Kamara. You don't want to beat him to death here, just handing him off the football left and right, do you?
I do, just because I love Kamara and I've got him on a fantasy team. So, yeah, give him all the touches. But no, I think this was completely game script. If you looked at, although one thing was interesting to me, because that first drive where they came out, those were all pass plays. So that was before they got behind. And then once they got behind, obviously, they were passing a little bit more. But that first drive being all pass plays, it does make me wonder if Peyton's changing up the game script a little bit. But I don't know why they would move away from what worked so well for them last year, which was a bit more run-heavy game script. Obviously, once they got a little bit further, you see them coming from behind. There was a little bit more passing and big pass plays. But yeah, I think this is purely game script. I think it's going to go week to week. Like Reed said, with the Rams coming up, that's going to be a high implied game total. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing and a lot of running.
Jeffrey.
I think it's mostly a product of game script. I mean, look, they're not going to be going up against Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, two of the best players of their position every week. A lot of this does come down to the Saints defense, though. We knew they were horrible against wide receiver ones going on. So this type of game shouldn't really surprise anyone. I think it's going forward against weaker teams. If their defense is still Civ-like, then, I mean, you could see more throwing from Drew Brees going into the year. Look, the one takeaway I have from this game is Drew Brees still has it. I mean, like a 73% completion rate last night. I mean, again, maybe it's a bit of a product of the opponent because the Houston Texans certainly cannot cover opposing teams' number 1 or number 2 or number 3 wide receivers either. But definitely expect to see New Orleans get a little bit run heavier, especially if the season wears down, just to keep Brees fresh.
Jeff, I would like to point out your whiteboard and your ability to draw, your fantastic ability to draw the eye emojis that Gronk just tweeted out. And Reed T. Fowler, heeding your advice, seconds before our show tonight, he went on and scooped up Rob Gronkowski in his fantasy league.
Click.
Again, riding my coattails, just like usual, Reed.
Yeah, like Nick Foles last week. Jeffrey.
Oh, let's not bring this up right now. Come on, relax, you two.
Come on. Let's talk about something really bad, the Texans backfield, which has been in turmoil all offseason. And last night featured two guys who didn't start with the team in training camp, Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson. I mean, what did you see, if anything, in that Houston running game that interests you in terms of fantasy, Rosalie?
Well, what interests me was Carlos Hyde. I mean, granted, let's talk about Houston backfield. It's never something I want to touch for my personal stuff, except for maybe, when you're talking about DFS, right? With DraftKings, there might be a slate you want to put him in there. But 8.3 yards per carry for Carlos Hyde, when we were all really calling him done, right? He showed maybe he's not so done. He ran really well last night. They split carries. He had actually one more carry than Duke Johnson. Duke got the better end of the passing downs for the running backs. But I really liked what I saw in Carlos Hyde. But we still have to be aware. As much as the Houston Texans actually run the ball, they run the ball 45% of the time last year, you still have Deshaun Watson taking 20% of that. And last night, with what he did, he also had 20% of it. So there's always going to be Deshaun Watson taking that, especially vulturing those goal line carries into the end zone. So none of them are a week-to-week kind of carry for me, but I might plug him in the bye weeks.
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Duke Johnson owners are probably a little bit perturbed about how good Carlos Hyde looked in the run game. I mean, when it comes down to it, Hyde only played about 30% of the snaps, but he took 10 carries. Johnson only took 9 carries. Johnson saw 5 targets in the pass game. Johnson still has more value just because of his PPR. He's just a better receiver. Carlos Hyde never been like a high-end receiver throughout his career. But yeah, I was a little bit shocked at how good Carlos Hyde looked. And maybe it's a little bit of the fact that Laramie Tunzel is just shoring up that offensive line. So it's good news for the Texans just from a real-life football perspective to have this run game. Maybe they can save Deshaun Watson's body from flying into the end zone, and they can just smash Carlos Hyde a little bit more. From a fantasy perspective, I think they're both going to have a little bit of value going forward, especially against weak opponents. If one of them gets injured, the other guy could have a really big week. So it's a week-to-week thing, but the efficiency was certainly there. I mean, New Orleans has a pretty solid run defense, too.
Reed, what did you see?
Well, Jacksonville should have kept him if he's this good of a running back, right, Jeff? No, this guy. Last year too, he started off really well. He started off really well in Cleveland, and obviously things transpired with Nick Chubb becoming a player that now is a transcendent talent for the Browns. But this is kind of what we expected a little bit of Carlos Hyde, is that all of the prognostication early on was, well, good thing that Houston signed Carlos Hyde because he's not a good running back. And he goes out and he shows that. Same thing with LaShawn McCoy, is that these guys early on in the seasons can have some run, can have some tread. But I do agree with Jeff, is that Duke Johnson is the back to own, because if you saw what he was able to do, he got 13 touches, 2 more than Carlos Hyde, and he's able to make something out of nothing. Carlos Hyde has never been that guy. Duke Johnson is that guy. Yes, you're a little worried. You wanted that upside and him to get those 75% snap count that we like to see, or 70%. But I think it's just, you got to hold tight. Laramie Tunsil on the offensive line, they need to gel first together, right? Tunsil just came there 5 days ago. So you got to give this time. I think Duke Johnson owners should just, pump the brakes on the panic, and he'll be just fine.
All right, let's go to the Raiders. They are 1-0 following Antonio Brown joining the team and then leaving the team. Tyrell Williams stepping up, 6 catches, 105 yards, 1 touchdown. I mean, how legit of a wide receiver one is this guy, Jeff?
He's legit. I mean, look, if you tuned in the past couple days here, we talk about Evan Ingram and how excited I am for him getting a chance. I'm just as excited for Tyrell Williams. This is a prototypical number 1 receiver, the way he rates out just from a physical perspective. I mean, we've seen it in flashes in the Chargers. The Chargers never really used him enough, in my opinion, but when he did get the doses, you saw him just take these insane after-the-catch touchdowns. And, I mean, we saw him last night. You clinched the game, coming up with tough catches over the middle, 17.5 yards per catch. I mean, that is what you want from your wide receiver one. And going into next week at 4,400, salivating against a matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he's gonna obviously suffer a little bit as the Oakland Raiders go, Derek Carr, and going up against tougher opponents. But I think it's going to be an all-year story again, and I think he's going to end up with really, really big numbers at the end of the year.
No AB, no problem for this guy, right, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, what Jeff was saying is that when we saw him too in 2016, when Keenan Allen went down with the Chargers when they were in San Diego, is that he was a top 14 wide receiver, and I think he was in the top 50 in fantasy point getters across the entire league. I mean, he saw about 9 targets per game and 7 touchdowns, and so this guy has the ability. And to what Jeff was saying about Derek Carr, yes, he's not as accurate of a thrower, and if you look at the Chargers back then, they were the 9th team in total offense at the end of the season. So that offense, clearly a better offense, gives offensive players a stock up. But this guy's catch radius is in the 98th percentile. We see how big he is. We see his wingspan. Derek Carr is not an accurate deep throw passer, but Tyrell Williams is an elite catcher when it comes to those 50-50 balls. We saw it last night. And this guy can just run. So yeah, I think that he can be close to a wide receiver 1 if he keeps those targets up. Darren Waller is fantastic, he has glimpses of being fantastic. Let's just pump the brakes on that. But yeah, I think he can, especially if this team is down a lot of games, which they should be in the season.
Okay, Rosalie, where do you sit on this guy?
I'm not quite as high on him. I do like Tyrell Williams. I liked him in San Diego, just like the guys said. But I'm not convinced that this offense is going to give him the opportunity that he needs in order to be a week in, week out wide receiver 1. Matchup dependent, sure. Even though, they did what they did last night against a Vic Fangio defense, so that's pretty impressive. You have to give them props for that. I don't think they're fully together there yet in Denver, but still, it is a Vic Fangio defense. But it is a high passing offense. They passed the ball 61% of the time last year. Last night, though, that was turned a little bit. They had 28 rushes to 26 pass attempts. So I'm wondering if that scheme is going to change a little bit, or if it was just indicative of what they needed to do against the Broncos last night. But what I'm really looking at is that what we saw last year with the tight end position, that Jared Cook and now the Darren Waller, they're getting the most of the targets, and they're the most targeted in the red zone as well. So he had a great night last night. He's definitely a legit flex right now for season long. And like Reed said, I really like him next week, though, versus Kansas City.
Good stuff. You three will tell us who you like on the waiver wire coming up right after Twins pitcher Kyle Gibson, fresh off the IL, is going to join Emerson, which is right after this one-on-one chit-chat with Donovan McNabb from the DraftKings Kickoff Bash in Hoboken.
Is the Zoom good? Ready? Go.
Just a couple of Syracuse guys hanging out talking. Donovan McNabb, Adam Kaufman, and look, let's, as a former quarterback, let's talk about some of the QB stuff, because there's so much going on around the NFL right now, especially here in week 1. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, both incredible today in their first games. Let's start with them, especially Lamar. Did you ever see that coming? 5 TD passes in the first game?
You know what? What bothered me was the conversation leading up into this season of Lamar Jackson's not a thrower. He can't throw the ball. They're going to just run the ball, and you can't win that way. And I'm sorry. I watched him in Louisville. He threw the ball fairly well, put up great numbers. The kid has shown great signs that he can throw the football. I mean, we've seen it on what was that Sunday night when they played against the San Diego Chargers. We know they can run the football, and bringing over Mark Ingram is definitely going to take the load off of them a little bit. But the young group of quarterbacks that we have are very exciting. They can sling the ball around. They show great mobility. They're showing they can play from the pocket. And when you talk about the two, and Patrick Mahomes as well as in Lamar Jackson, with 2 good coordinators behind them, the sky's going to be the limit. I mean, it's going to be really exciting in the AFC.
Oh, boy. Mahomes picked up right where he left off after
Absolutely.
that MVP season, too. 3 touchdown passes, and was able to find it was
I mean,
Sammy
he got
Watkins
Sammy
for all of
Watkins.
them. It was
that was probably the best
he had an
Sammy's played
incredible
since
day.
he was back in Clemson.
Right. Yeah,
he couldn't stay healthy enough to be out there. But you know what? Again, you look at what Andy Reid has been able to do around Patrick Mahomes. When they brought Sammy Watkins in, Sammy was coming off of injury. He played with the Rams. He showed he could stay healthy at that particular time, that short period. And then you get Tariq Hill. You go and draft another receiver from Georgia who's a speeder. You got, a guy who can control the interior part of the field, and Travis Kelce. And probably he's got some of the best dance moves of any tight ends out there.
But the guy who went off, Nick Foles, obviously, to do what he did for, your former team, the Philadelphia Eagles, and now to finally get an opportunity to be the guy after backing up
Right.
Carson Wentz, at least when he wasn't hurt, and then or when he was hurt, and then going on to
Right.
Jacksonville, knocked out in the first game and broken left clavicle.
You know what? It's so unfortunate for the young man. I mean, this is what he was looking forward to, of being a franchise quarterback again, showing that he can play the position and lead the team. And go out in his first game. It's probably going to be a 10 to 12 week injury. Hopefully he doesn't need surgery. But they definitely need him back in the helm to continue this thing going in Jacksonville.
Yeah, tough break, obviously, literally.
Yeah,
but,
right.
you know, in talking about quarterbacks, we've talked about Tom Brady a bunch in the past, and we know how
The
good
old
this
man,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's probably not going to look like an old man at 42 this year with all those weapons he's got around him. I mean, look at that team. Now, I realize it's not a few years ago, but
Right.
never mind you got Julian Edelman, the reigning Super Bowl MVP, but you also have Antonio Brown after leaving the Raiders and celebrating like hell.
From a mental standpoint, you just don't know what AB you're going to get. I mean, and that's the frustrating part for a guy who's so talented, you know, who social media has continued to control his life, where you wonder if the guy wants to be a movie star, the guy wants to be a global icon, or does he want to be a great football player? And you know, you can't have all of them at once. And I know a lot of those diva wide receivers feel that way, but just play football and good things will take care of itself. And I think that's where John Gruden and Mike Mayock were at that particular time, of just saying, hey, let's just play football. Focus on football and everything else will take care of itself when the time comes. He couldn't handle that. And then now you're going into pretty much the jungle. You're going to the jungle where he's going to tell you pretty much, put your cell phone away. I don't ever want to see you social media. He probably is going to limit his media stuff. And then we don't know if he goes out on the outside and he starts doing social media and his media stuff. That's just going to try to tear up a team. And, you know, Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick don't play that game.
You think he's going to fall in line?
I mean, you have to at this particular point, because this is kind of almost like your last step, your last chance.
But is it when you're that talented and still that young?
Yeah, remember when Chad Ochocinco went over there?
Yeah.
And the years
bad.
that he put up in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
And then he really didn't play much. He was DMP a couple times. It didn't work out.
Didn't
Then
understand
he
the
ended up going
playbook.
to Miami. Well, that's the thing is, he's a guy that's kind of off kilter. He'll run some different routes that's maybe not in the playbook at that time.
Right.
You can't do that in New England.
Yeah.
You got to run what they want, and there's no dancing at the line and doing all that, because everything is based off timing.
Yeah.
Hey, you mess time up, you're going to be sitting over here with me and you watching all type of games that go on here.
I'd love to hang out with the two of you
No,
guys.
I'll pass. I don't know what conversation we might have together. No, I'm just kidding. But I just hope for the better for him,
Yeah.
because it's really making his name look bad right now after that whole situation.
All righty, let's get this party started here with Kyle Gibson, pitcher for the Minnesota Twins. Thanks for making some time for DraftKings, dude.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Heck of a year, though, for you guys. Third best record in the AL. So what has been the biggest reason for your team's success this season? What do you got?
You know, starting in spring training, we kind of saw what the offense was going to look like. And I think, you know, we've talked about it all year. Team offense is something that really can drive a team's confidence. You know, you can have really good pitching and lose a lot of games 2-1, 3-2, and your team confidence doesn't really stay elevated. But from the get-go, you know, we were scoring 6-7 runs a game. And when your offense isn't taking a night off, that really gives your pitching a lot of leeway and a lot of room for error. And when your offensive guys that play every single day are showing up to the park confident that they're going to score runs, the team confidence stays pretty high.
Yeah, and I think a lot of credit has gone to your first-year manager, Rocco Baldelli, and, you know, rightfully so. So what do you like the most about playing for him?
You know, he's really closely removed from being in the game. You know, less than 10 years ago, he was obviously playing and playing at a high level. And I think that gives him a little bit of an edge on how to relate to players and how to relate to the newer clubhouse. I think it's easy to see that the game has changed in a lot of different ways over the last 10 years. And he relates really well. So I think that's one thing. And you know, we don't have an atmosphere where, you know, guys are playing tight and tense. And I think that really helps. Guys can show up to the park confident in what they're doing. And if you have a bad day, you show up the next day and nobody's there to remind you about it. Everybody's just there to try to help you through the next day.
Yeah, you know, now you're off the IL as well. How excited are you to kind of get back out there and contribute to this race, you know, for the postseason?
Yeah, man, it's been a weird summer for me, dealing with health stuff all year and talking to different doctors, trying different medications. I ended up with E. coli after a mission trip in January. Knew that E. coli can really wreck your system for, you know, up to 9 or 10 months, but I had been feeling really good at the beginning of the year, and then the stress of the season, the travel, and everything along with it just kind of caught up to me around All-Star break, and just really hadn't been sleeping well. So it took about 10 days, and got on a new medication to try to get some inflammation out of my gut and give me a chance to sleep, and I've been feeling a lot better. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
Yeah, you're confident that you can kind of keep it together here at the end, towards the end of the year, because I know how and your team knows how important you are to this team's success.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm definitely confident and then I can be feeling better down the stretch. And the big battle was just sleep. I mean, I probably was getting maybe 4 to 5 solid hours of sleep for 3 months straight. So that's been getting better, and thankfully I've been feeling better, and bullpens have been better. And when you're going out there for the first inning and it feels like the 7th inning already, that's a good sign. And that's what I was battling the last 4 or 5 starts. So feeling a lot better, and we're excited for this stretch, man. It's what every team wants to be doing is playing meaningful September games. And even though Cleveland's 5 behind us, we're still playing meaningful games every day, knowing that if we slip up for a week, this race gets really close. So we're excited coming down the stretch.
Yeah, it's extremely important right now. Keep that pedal to the metal, keep the pedal to the floor here. I'm happy that you are feeling better, and you have been with the Twins your entire 7-year career here. A team that's only had 1 trip to the playoffs, 2 in that span. So what's different about this year's team, I guess, compared to the others you've been on?
Yeah, I think 2015 and 2017 is it's close comparison. But what's different is when you bring in as many new guys as we did, and the team to mesh like we did, it's pretty special. But I think the young group of guys that have really come into form, the Keplers, the Polancos, the Buxtons, the Rosarios, Sano, I mean, we can go through the whole lineup, but all those guys have really started to click at this point in their career at the right time. And I think it's something in 2017 we knew could happen, and it kind of did. Last year we had some injuries and it didn't really come together, but this year everything's really worked out with the acquisitions, with the young guys playing well, and everything. It's kind of been a perfect storm of success, so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think what's making a lot of headlines right now is how ridiculous you guys are at the plate. Setting a Major League home run record that was like last week, passing the Yankees for most taters by a team in a single season. That record the Yankees set just last year, for crying out loud. I mean, Minnesota has 8 players with 20 or more long balls. So how impressive is the power this offense possesses? I mean, you're probably just sitting back being like, just constantly watching these things fly out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then you look and you're like, man, you kind of feel bad for the guy on the mound, because if it's a night where our guys are seeing the ball well, they're not missing mistakes. And as a starting pitcher especially, you get through some of those rough outings by the other team missing some mistakes. And when our guys are locked in, they just don't miss mistakes. And, they've been driving the ball really well and getting big hits. And I think the only situation we really haven't been getting big hits is in bases loaded. Other than that, we're getting the big hit when we need it. And it's been really fun to watch, just knowing that you're never out of a game, whether it's 3 or 4 runs in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning. Our fans are sticking around, and we all in the dugout know we have a chance to win.
How happy are you that you don't have to pitch against your team?
Yeah, I mean, it's I faced some of these guys in the past couple of years, and now to have them on our team all together is pretty special. Not having to face Nelson Cruz anymore, not having to face Jonathan Scope, 2 guys that hit the ball hard and drive the ball really well. But I mean, you look at this lineup, and it's similar to the Yankees. They have a lineup, and even the Astros, that you really have to somewhat navigate it carefully and understand which guys you can't let beat you at what time. And when you have 9 guys in the lineup, which most nights we do, that can drive the ball out of the ballpark, there's not many areas for let up, and not many spots where you can say, okay, this guy's not going to beat me, so I'm going to attack this way and give myself an out, because the guaranteed out could be a guaranteed home.
Hey, it's Brendan Glasheen in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. John Gruden all done talking about Antonio Brown. His team was ready to roll without him. The Raiders beat the Broncos 24-16 in the Black Hole Monday night. Gruden's wished AB luck a few times, and he's ready to move on. I'm never going to bring it up again. That incident, whatever you want to call it, had nothing to do with our team's focus or preparation. That's it. End of story. Tyrell Williams doesn't mind. Oakland's de facto #1 receiver turned 7 targets into 6 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown against Denver. 25.5 DK points. Williams carries great upside as Derek Carr's top target in Week 2 against a Chiefs defense that last week allowed both DJ Chark and Chris Conley to exceed 95 receiving yards, and Williams is still well underpriced at just $4,400. Tight end Darren Waller also reaped the benefits of no AB. Waller was targeted 8 times, caught 7 balls for 70 yards. The dude is 6'6" and got open pretty easily against a good Denver front 7. Even running back Josh Jacobs impressed in his pro debut. I know. It was only 1 game, but credit the Raiders. They tuned out all that noise, and believe it or not, they were one of the more impressive teams in Week 1 of the NFL season.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to baseball.
Okay.
That was impressive of us. 14-game slate coming our way tonight. Popping up on your screen is DK Live's Julian Edlow and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca.
Chase or fade is the name of the game. So agree or disagree with the following statements, gentlemen. Orioles plus 270 underdogs at home against the Dodgers. Jules, chase or fade, you can come up with one good reason that Baltimore could win this game.
Well, nobody else has been able to come up with a good reason because that has currently been mashed all the way to plus 330 for Baltimore on DK Sportsbook. So the money's been coming in on the Dodgers all day, and when you think about it, obviously that's a big number, but I just don't know any way that you can bet on the Orioles here, considering we just saw these like Houston-Detroit games when we were getting the Tigers at like plus 400, and they actually won one of those games. The Orioles beat Verlander in a similarly priced game as well. So this is all about the price. Like, nobody thinks the Orioles are going to win. It's just, can you give me good enough odds to convince me to take them? And given what we just saw between Houston and Detroit, I think I would need this number to be around plus 400 to consider taking Baltimore.
All right, Matt. So breaking news with Julian here. So plus 330. Good enough odds for you to chase the Orioles here?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a sucker for a big underdog, particularly a big unpopular underdog. So I've got a trend here. If you look at teams that are plus 250 to plus 350 on the money line, getting less than 20% of the betting tickets, they have historically given you a return on investment of 22.5%. So you're going to lose a lot of these games. They're 46 and 96 in this trend, but the times that you win, you're going to be essentially tripling your money plus. So you don't need to win very often, and I think that, we always talk about being a contrarian bettor. You can't get much more contrarian than taking the Orioles tonight. So I could definitely be talked into putting a little sprinkle on them.
A little sprinkle.
Oh,
Biggest total on the slate is 13.5 in the Cardinals-Rockies game. Matt, chase or fade that this is just course field bias and that this total is just too high?
I'm going to fade this. I think that these teams, if anything, the spread is too low. We got 2 pretty mediocre pitchers on the mound. I mean, Chichi Gonzalez, he needs to go back to wherever he came from. He's been awful since the Rockies started using him, particularly at Coors Field. Neither of these teams is a phenomenal hitting team, but it's just such a good spot for both offenses. The total on this game opened at 12.5. It's up to 13.5. The bigger money seems to be coming in on the over, so I'm going the other direction. I think that if you want to bet this game, the over is the play.
Jules, where are you going on this one?
Yeah, Action Matt and I are on the same page here. I'm fading this. Chichi Gonzalez is terrible. Like, Colorado has not won any of the 9 games that he's pitched in. The opposition is averaging 7 runs per game in those outings against him. And this Cardinals offense has been red hot. So I think that we could see St. Louis get to, 9 or 10 runs here by themselves. And then Michael Wacha is a guy that has a 5.4 ERA on the road this season. Colorado's bullpen, very close to the bottom of the league. The only good pitching we should see in this game is probably going to come out of the St. Louis bullpen. But I think that St. Louis can find a way to get to double digits, and Colorado should be able to make up the rest of this against Michael Wacha.
All right, how about the Twins here, guys? Minus 148 home favorites over the Nationals, but you can get mini starter Jose Barrios at plus odds to get the win. So that's plus 140. Jules, chase or fade that JB will pick up the dub.
Yeah, this isn't a game that's necessarily on my radar to bet, but I will chase that I much prefer betting Barrios to get the win here at plus 140 than just the Twins money line at 148. You would think just at minus 148, you would think just on game script here that an ace like Barrios would be able to, give you 7 innings and come out of this game with the lead. And then hope that Minnesota's bullpen can hold on. So I don't necessarily think the minus 148 money line is a great price. So if I was going to bet anything on the outcome of this game, I think getting the plus money on Barrios getting the win is the more attractive spot. We kind of saw this last week when we were on the show and we talked about Jake Junis at plus odds getting the win. That one wound up working out. If you can get the plus money on the win, I think it's a more valuable bet.
Okay, how attractive are these odds for Barrios getting the win to you, Maddie?
Yeah, me and Julian just in complete lockstep tonight. And you look great, by the way, too, my man. You're looking real sharp.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
I think that definitely much more appealing to take the plus 140 than to take the minus 148 or whatever the odds are listed at the moment. We're showing like 0 advantage on the money line one way or the other in this game using our betting tools and data that we have at the Action Network. So I think that this game for me is pretty much going to be a stay away. So with that in mind, I would much rather take a shot on the plus odds with the better pitcher if I was going to target this matchup.
Good stuff, guys. Quick break, and we'll be back to talk waiver wire picks.
Okay, we're going this one.
Hey, I'm Brendan Glasheen, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. DraftKings lets me wear watches to work. I just don't have one on today. My producer does. I guess I could have went out of my way to take his or find one to make this video better. Anyways, Odell Beckham Jr. likes to wear his $350,000 Rishad Mill watch, playing football here, there, in the shower. It's just on him, he says. The NFL warned the Browns OBJ's watch wearing violates the rule for wearing a hard object during a game. Beckham tweeted late Monday night, "If it ain't one thing, it's another," and he admitted he was referencing the watch flap Tuesday. Beckham argues the watch shouldn't be an issue. You've got to look into the rule book. It says you can't wear any hard objects. The watch is plastic, but people have knee braces on that are hard and made out of metal, and you don't see them taping it up. No jewelry on, so I'm good. Be prepared for the tight shots in OBJ's wrist during the Monday Night Football broadcast next week in New York.
Week 1 of the NFL is in the books, and we saw impressive performances from players that we weren't expecting much from. Also, a bunch of injuries, so opened up opportunities for other players here.
So what does this mean?
Week 2 waiver wild's gonna be wild.
Okay, let me introduce our panel for said waiver wire pickup segment thing. Reed Fowler, Rosalie Michaels, Jeff Ulrich. Good to see all three.
What's the
of
weird
you.
accent you're affecting?
I don't really know, man. A lot of things are going on up here right now. You don't want to know half of it.
Okay, all right, let's just jump in. These are waiver wire picks for week 2 in season-long leagues. Jeff, quarterbacks, who are you looking at?
I'm looking at Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, I think Cincinnati kind of surprised everybody just the way they came out. Andy Dalton threw the ball 51 times in week 1. I mean, Zach Taylor and the Bengals offense kind of ran like a mini air raid Arizona style offense. They had 3 receivers on the field for basically 80% of the snaps, 51 attempts by Dalton. This wasn't a game script thing. Cincinnati jumped out in front, so they had an opportunity to run the ball more, and they just decided to go pass heavy, playing Tyler Boyd from the slot. I mean, Andy Dalton looked fantastic. He completed almost 70% of his passes. And he's going to be viable. I think you got to really consider if you ended up with like a QB who just started slow or banged up, or Nick Foles, and Andy Dalton's out there. I think this Bengals offense is going to be pass heavy all year.
Okay, Reed, quarterback.
Yeah, it's going to be Allen of the Josh variety for me. You say floor. 10 rush attempts, 38 yards, got a touchdown. Yes, he turned the ball over a couple of times in that game, but look, this guy, even if he does that, he can still get you and still be a viable quarterback. Like Jeff was mentioning, if you had Jameis Winston, if you had Nick Foles, Ben Roethlisberger, and you potentially want to sit him or if you're in 2 QB leagues, which Josh Allen should be gone already. This guy is fantastic, and he goes up against a Giants team that looked extremely suspect on defense against Dallas. Not saying that Dallas and those guys over there are the same with Buffalo, but safe floor with Josh Allen.
Rosalie, quarterback, who are you looking at?
Yeah, the quarterback area was pretty thin, but in finding somebody, I really liked Case Keenum. I've kind of been on the Case Keenum train for a couple of years. I like him going back to Minnesota. I know everybody's hard on him, but you look at that game this week, you know what? He had 117.2 QBR rating, 68% completion percentage, which was better than Watson, Brady, and Cam this week. And Watson had a pretty decent game. The O-line was giving him a good amount of time to throw. Maybe that's why he got to sit back there and relax a little bit and get those throws up. And with Geis gone for a little bit, the next 2 games are difficult matchups for him with Dallas and Chicago. But then he's got the Giants in week 4 and Miami in week 6. So he could be some of those good plug-and plays.
All right, Reed, what about a running back, dude?
Yeah, I like Chris Thompson, especially if you're in PPR leagues. This guy had a Chris Thompson-like game. He's finally healthy. He's the most healthy he's going to be all season, week 1, and then obviously in week 2. And now with Darius Geis, he's gone, right? He's going to be hurt. It's the other knee now, not the one that he had that ACL tear last season. And Adrian Peterson, yes, he comes back in that early down role, but Washington should be down quite a bit. To what Rosalie was saying with Case Keenum. So, like, if you just take a look at just the game scripts that we should be looking with Chris Thompson and you're in those PPR leagues, I think he's a viable pickup and someone that you could play in your flex and get those 5 to 6 catches for about 50 yards.
All right, Rosalie, how about a running back on the waiver wire you like?
Yeah, the only thing you have to worry about is that that Redskins running back curse, right, Reed? With Chris Thompson.
Yeah.
I talked about him a little bit earlier. Carlos Hyde, at those 8.3 yards per carry on the 10 rushes, those impressed me. Maybe they shouldn't impress me as much, but I really like a guy who can run that hard. He only had the 1 reception for 2 yards, but I think he's going to see his role grow in the coming weeks. And the Texans offense proved against that New Orleans Saints defense that they're going to be explosive. So I'm looking for, in these waiver wire pickups, which offenses are going to be the most explosive. So obviously he's not going to average 8.3 yards per carry every week, but he's definitely a great bye week or injury replacement at that really shallow running back category.
Jeff, who is your free agent find right now?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is like the obvious one, but Malcolm Brown.
Yeah, that's obvious.
The Los Angeles. I think most people, like me, were expecting Darrell Henderson to just waltz into the backup role or like some kind of timeshare with Todd Gurley. John McVay obviously sent a clear message because it's going to be Malcolm Brown as the sort of change of pace guy, at least to start the year. He's very effective, 4.9 yards per carry, obviously the 2 touchdowns. But he got almost equal snaps to Todd Gurley in a close game. This wasn't a blowout situation. The Rams are going to be managing Todd Gurley, and this is really a situation of you're playing the odds here. The Rams are probably going to either rest Todd Gurley at some point just because of his knee issue, or he's going to get injured at some point because he's been injury prone. So having Malcolm Brown there, even just for a couple weeks during the season and getting like that main carry man on the Rams, it's just huge. So I definitely go after him this week.
What about a wide receiver that you're looking at, Rosalie?
I'm going on the Jeff train here. I'm going obvious too with another Brown, Marquise Brown. The beauty of what he did this week was not just what he did. It was the fact that he did it in just 14 snaps. And he had 23.5 yards after the catch per reception. That's crazy when you consider that the closest to that this week was 14.9 yards after catch by Sammy Watkins. This kid is special. So let's hope that Baltimore keeps that passing attack up. They looked really good. Granted, it's against Miami. But their next 2 games are Arizona and Kansas City. So I'm not chasing him as because he had 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm chasing him because he is a player that showed that Baltimore may have a much better vertical passing game than any of us thought.
Rosalie has me convinced. Who are you looking at, Jeff?
I mean, it's DJ Chark. I mean, obviously, I don't even really know what I have to say at this point. He's going to be a wide receiver 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, played over 70% of the snaps. And the Jaguars spread it out pretty good, too. But they had 3 wide receivers play over 70%. So, again, new quarterback, whatever. DJ Chark's going to be there. If you really want to stash someone, though, Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers is kind of interesting, too, with Juju Smith-Schuster banged up. That guy's a real talent as well. But I'd go after Chark.
Gardner Minshew, bro.
Reed.
So, of course, Jacksonville, enter Jacksonville QB2 here, always. Yes, it's John Ross for me. We do this every single year with John Ross for the past 3 years that he's been in the league. The first 2, he's been injured, and also under Marv Lewis. Jeff mentioned it. Zach Taylor, 51 pass attempts in a close game, too. This game was pretty close with Seattle, not what we were expecting, and he still threw the ball a bunch. AJ Green is going to be out for probably 3 to 6 weeks, anywhere in that time frame. And he had 12 targets, and he also dropped very catchable targets. And so if you're going against his San Francisco team this week, and that pass rush is going to be tough, I can see a lot of John Ross screenplays. And if he can get those big plays, those big chunky yards in his 3rd year, he's a talented guy, so I'd go pick him up.
Jeffrey, how about tight end, dude?
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Bengals, too. I mean, I think we're all over this pass attack, but it's Tyler Eifert for me. Obviously, a lot of the better names like Mark Andrews and Waller are probably already gone, but Tyler Eifert is likely available. He didn't play a ton of snaps, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. They basically had the same amount of targets as CJ Azuma, but Eifert is just the more talented pass catcher. And whenever he's out there, I mean, he just from a snap count percentage play to a target, he actually, caught more or had more targets compared to Azuma, compared to the number of snaps he played. So you like that usage. Again, if the Bengals are going to throw 40, 50 times a game, he's definitely talented enough. He might be a little bit of a touchdown dependent, but if you're in tight end need, I think he's going to be viable, especially this week against San Francisco.
Reed, talk to me.
TJ Hawkinson, this guy set the rookie record for tight ends in their opening game, and we usually don't see rookie tight ends do that well. Evan Ingram sort of bucked that trend, and now we see TJ Hawkinson in a game. Yes, we had an overtime. Yes, it was more pass heavy. We thought that would be the case. But even though Darrell Bevell and these guys want to run the ball, they have someone in TJ Hawkinson that can both block, which to his detriment could obviously thwart or cap his upside. But we saw what he can do in the pass game. So if he's still out there, grab him. And if Olsen can't play, Ian Thomas on Thursday would be a nice little spot to take.
Rosalie.
I've been banging this drum for weeks now, but apparently nobody's listening because he's still available out there in a lot of leagues.
Who is it?
That's Darren Waller.
Oh.
Darren Waller obviously took over that Jared Cook position in Oakland. He saw over 30% of Derek Carr's passing looks last night, but he also never left the field. So we saw him get the most targets. We saw him get the most receptions. The Oakland Raiders do target their tight end in the red zone 37% of the time. Cook had over 100 targets last season. Darren Waller is going to eat it up this week and next week and the week after that.
Yeah. Good stuff last night.
Yeah.
Weeks.
That is a lot of weeks. Yeah, you know, there's how many are there in the year?
Because it's going to keep happening.
It will.
52 weeks in a year.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emerson. Thanks, guys. We're turning our attention back to baseball after Pat Mayo gives us a PGA preview of this weekend's.
I'm going to fact check that on the break.
Greenbrier Classic.
I'm Pat Mayo with the DraftKings preview for a military tribute at the Greenbrier. For starters, let's focus on what remains the same at the Greenbrier. There's still 156 players in the field. The old white TPC remains in West Virginia, hasn't moved. The course is still there, and it persists as a par 70, just a shade under 7,300 yards. In its new spot on the schedule, the Greenbrier is welcoming almost 50 recently promoted players from the Korn Ferry Tour now as well. And don't forget, the Greenbrier was canceled in 2016 because of massive flooding. The old white TPC remains relatively intact from pre-flooding layouts, but the putting surfaces and green complex had to be rebuilt. New grasses were introduced to the greens, fairways, and bunker faces. Playing under 7,300 yards with massive fairways and at elevation 2,000 feet above sea level, allows the field to crack drivers from the tee box with relatively no risk. Players hit almost 68% of fairways, well above the tour average of 61%. And since the ball will carry farther at elevation, driver isn't necessary, but will afford the longer hitters an opportunity to smack wedges at almost all of the par 4s. For picks, Joaquin Niemann rates out the best over the last 36 rounds than any other player in the field. And the good news? He's only the 7th most expensive player on DraftKings at $9,700. Chileans made the cut in both appearances, earning a 5th place paycheck in 2018, and ended the season doing exactly what you want to see from him. Gaining in ball striking in 9 of his final 10 starts, with a pair of top 5 finishes, and a lone result worse than T31. Pretty good. From the lower end, just pray Andrew Landry has retained his stellar iron play from the last 2 months. And he may be the best value on the board at $7,400. Over his last 36 rounds, Landry sits top 15 in approach, birdies are better in par 4 scoring, along with top 3 ranks in proximity from 125 to 175 yards, and par 4 scoring from 400 to 450 yards. And that's it. That was your DraftKings preview for a military tribute at the Greenbrier. For an extended breakdown, check out the Pat Mayo Experience wherever you download podcasts. I'm Pat Mayo.
Okay, for the final time tonight, we are going to talk about this 14-game Major League Baseball slate. We are going to talk to DK Live's Julian Edlow right now and the Action Matt LaMarca from the Action Network. Welcome to Price Check, gentlemen. So which players are worth their price tag on said slate?
Matt, 4 pitchers over 10K on the slate: Buehler, Gallen, Lynn, and Wheeler. Who's worth that high pricey number there?
I think the only one you can even really consider is Walker Buehler against the Orioles. Obviously a great matchup. He has the best Vegas data on the slate. That said, even he, I think, is a little bit too expensive for me tonight. I think that there are some other cheaper pitchers who I like a little bit better. Buehler's StatCast data in particular over his past 2 starts has been pretty bad. So I have no problem fading this entire tier. But again, if you want to pick one, Buehler is the clear choice.
Jules, do you agree if you were to take one of these guys, if you're going to pay up, it would be Buehler?
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm looking at Zach Gallen here for 11-2. I just love this kid. He was, kind of undervalued when he was in Miami. He's been really good so far since coming over to Arizona in the trade. And you just look at his last game, 7 innings pitched. He only allowed 1 hit, struck out 8 San Diego Padres for 34 DK points. Not that that's going to be the baseline for him. Obviously, the Padres offense is not very good and is also strikeout prone. But I think it's a decent spot at the Mets. Solid pitcher's park. I think Zach Gallen is the guy that I would go with if I had to pay up for one of them.
Jules, 4 bats in the outfield at over 5,500. Yelich, Bellinger, Peterson, Blackmon. Same question as above. Which one is worth making it rain for?
Yeah, I actually don't know if I would pay up for any of the bats, but if I have to go with one, I'm going to go with Cody Bellinger here. I just think this matchup, I know we talked about it in the sportsbook segment, if it's enticing to go with the Orioles at plus 300 or better. And while the odds are nice, you still got to love the Dodgers offense in this spot. Todd Blatch going for the Orioles has an ERA over 10. He gave up 7 runs in a start against the Dodgers earlier this year as a member of San Francisco. And this Orioles bullpen is just terrible, dead last in baseball. So I just think Bellinger is going to see the worst pitching all night here.
Okay, Matty, where do you sit on this one? Bat you're going to pay up for in the outfield?
You can never go wrong with Charlie Blackmon at home against a right-handed pitcher. Certainly don't mind him at 5,500, but I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going slightly cheaper. I'm going down to 5,200, and I'm taking Ronald Acuna versus Jason Vargas. Acuna has smashed lefties this year. A lot more pop against left-handed pitchers, and the weather situation right now looks really beneficial for him. We've got a wind of basically 10 miles an hour blowing straight out to center field. So I like his upside tonight at a slightly cheaper salary.
At catcher, Mitch Garver is head and shoulders above anyone else at 5,700. Do you pay up for him, or is tonight a night to punt on catcher Matt?
Hard pass on Garver. 5,700, batting in the 5th spot. Not seeing the value there. I would prefer to go with Grandal at 4,400. He's hit the ball really well of late, has a pretty good matchup against Hernandez. And if you want to go real cheap, I am a fan of Roberto Perez. We're still waiting on the Indians lineup, but I'm very interested in the Indians right-handed bats tonight against Suarez. He cannot get right-handers out, and I expect the Indians lineup to have a bunch of them in there.
Jules, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Garver's been really hot lately. That makes him intriguing, but going up to 5,700 at catcher, I think it is crazy. It's not even all that good of a spot necessarily for him against the Nationals at home. So for me, I actually do agree with Matt. I think Grandal's a really good play and is kind of attractive because he's only $100 more than Yadier Molina, who will be a really popular play. So you can kind of pivot off of him with that. But Molina is the guy that I'm going to talk about here just because I want to target any and all things against Chichi Gonzalez. I don't really care about the splits or metrics or whatever. Anybody and everybody has been hitting this guy, particularly at Coors Field. So as chalky as a Cardinal stack might be, I think that Yadier Molina might be a bat that gets left out of some of them because people will try and punt at catcher and think he's in a very good spot.
All right, Jules, slate approved time. Who is your must start on this entire slate?
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Cardinals here. I think a Cardinals stack, getting as many of those left-handed bats in there as possible. I think the Cardinals go for double-digit runs at Coors.
Mr. LaMarca, I need your slate approved pick, please.
I'm going a little off the radar here. I want Ryan Yarbrough at pitcher tonight. Against the Rangers, they've been dreadful offensively over the second half of the season. They ranked 26th in WRC plus against left-handers over that time frame. And I mentioned the win situation for Atlanta. The win situation for Yarbrough is going to be amazing in Texas. We've got like a 15-mile-an-hour wind blowing straight in from center field. And I owe this trend to my man John Ewing over at the Action Network. But with the wind blowing in, the unders at Globe Life are 50, 24, and 4. Most profitable stadium in baseball to bet the under in that situation. So I am going with Yarbrough. I think he has a really nice start to it.
All right. Thank you, Jim Cantori.
You two are free to go. We'll look at some of the interesting NFL spreads for week 2 after this.
What up? I'm Brendan Glasheen, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Pitchers love throwing to certain catchers. That's been part of baseball forever. Noah Syndergaard hasn't had his binky behind the plate multiple times this year. The Mets ace was reportedly livid this time around when he found out he would be throwing to catcher Wilson Ramos during his start on Sunday, a start in which he gave up 4 runs in 5 innings to the Phillies, who won 10-7 over the Amazons. Syndergaard confronted manager Mickey Callaway and general manager Brodie Van Wagenen over the decision pregame. Callaway told Sportsnet New York Monday, "Noah understands that I'm going to make the lineup and he's going to go out there and compete for the team. He understands that we're trying to do something special here and get to the playoffs, and that is everything else is separated from that." Syndergaard now has an ERA over 5 throwing to Ramos. I'm sure he prefers his 2.45 ERA with Tomas Nido in 10 games. Don't get this twisted. Thor has been subpar all season. Career high 4.06 ERA in 28 starts. Wilson Ramos has been crushing the ball lately. Mets have to get him in the lineup somehow, since they do still have a sniff at a wild card. If Syndergaard is as good as he thinks he is, he figures it out no matter who is catching. As Callaway said, he can't make everybody happy.
Understandable reaction, fellas. This waking nightmare happens every day and could have been avoided with the right tool for the job. Introducing the Lawnmower 2.0 from Manscaped, a precision-engineered personal trimmer for an unruly bush.
Okay, let's wrap up this show talking some football. 'Tis the season. Our football friends are back. Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, Rosalie Michaels. Hello, everybody. Yeah, that's... Oh, is that what that is?
52 weeks in a year. You were right, Emerson.
Thank you.
Gold star.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Did you want to continue to read your...
I will.
Okay.
Let's play some NFL high or low. Peeping some of the interesting spreads and totals on the DK Sportsbook ahead of week 2.
Bucks take on the Panthers on Thursday night. Carolina fell to the Rams at home, while Tampa was torched by the 49ers at home. So Carolina opens up as 6.5-point home favorites. Is that spread too high or too low for you, Rosalie?
Well, if you look at how bad Jameis Winston looked last week, but you also have to look at since his rookie year, Winston has gone 0-3 straight up in Thursday night games and 0-3 against the spread. So the Buccaneers are just 1-3 overall in their past 4 games against the Panthers. They are 2-2 against the spread. But to be honest, I don't know that I'm going to bet on the Panthers either because they're 1-4 against the spread in their past 5 Thursday night games. So I think that this spread is really right where it needs to be. That being said, that I don't know which side I would take in it. I think it's going to be really, really close with this one. I think the Panthers are just getting that home field advantage.
Jeff, what do you think?
I'm pretty much on the same page as Rosalie. This isn't really a game I'm super salivating over. I mean, I don't really want to rely on Jameis Winston to cover that, especially because of how many pick six he threw in week 1. But again, I mean, you have a Carolina team who's not really been that great as a home favorite. They had a slight winning record last year. And then they're a very heavy public team right now. It looks like 80% of the bets coming in on Carolina. I think if this line stayed at -6.5, I would lean towards Carolina personally. Tampa Bay 4-7-1 as away underdogs over the last couple seasons. That's not very good. But at the same time, I'm not like super thrilled about betting Carolina to cover here. But that's the way I would lean if forced to choose.
I'm thrilled to see what outfit Cam Newton wears. Reed.
What's the over-under on that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need.
Yeah, how much barbed wire on the hat is he going to have in this presser? Look, I mean, 6.5 for Carolina to me is too high. I get the sentiment on Tampa Bay. And to Jeff's point, what he was saying about the public sentiment, 80% of bets coming in Carolina, look, that offense still didn't look that good. I mean, yes, Christian McCaffrey did his thing, and he's absolutely great for fantasy. But when you look at the spread, I don't really think both of these teams coming off a short week is going to be that big of a delta or a difference between the two teams. I think both have question marks on the offensive line. Both have question marks a little bit more so with Tampa Bay at the quarterback. And I just think if you look at Tampa Bay after their losses, they're 4-0-1 against the spread. So, look, Winston's going to probably do a lot of checkdowns. He's probably going to have a lot of short passes to Godwin. He's not going to be chucking it downfield. I think they keep this close.
Jeffrey, one of the highest totals on the slate is Chiefs-Raiders at 52. Is that total too high, or is it too low for you?
It's too low. I can't believe that it opened at this, to be honest. I mean, like I talked about this last week with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chiefs, as away in their away games, they're 8-1, hitting the over in their last 9 away games. This is with Patrick Mahomes basically as their starting QB. They put so much pressure on the home team to score, and these totals just skyrocket here. So I'm definitely taking the over at 52. I don't even know what number this would have to get to for me to consider the under. Probably in the high 50s, but again, they're 8-1 in the last 9 games, hitting the overs as the away team. So give me Kansas. Give me the over in this game.
Reed, which way you going, bud?
Yeah, same thing. Kansas City 11-5 in their last 16 hitting the over in Oakland. Look, they can put up a 30-burger in their first half against Oakland, and Kansas City's defense is susceptible to points. So yeah, I agree with Jeff here.
All right, Rosalie, how about it?
Yeah, I'm never doubting the Chiefs' ability to go over in the 50s. Again, if the Jaguars' defense couldn't keep them from scoring 40 points, there's no way the Raiders' defense is going to do that. And, I mean, the Raiders' defense looked pretty good last night, but that was against Denver. Denver is not Kansas City. They're not going to match up with how quickly the Chiefs are going to run up the points, but the Raiders showed that they do have some offense. So I think 52 is way too low. It's an easy over.
Okay, after getting blown out by the Ravens, the Dolphins are 18.5-point home underdogs against the Pats, who took care of business against the Steelers on Sunday night. Is that too high of a spread or too low, Reed? Does it depend on whether or not AB plays?
It's got to go to me first. You don't see these spreads on Sundays. You see them on Saturdays.
Yeah.
I can't remember a time I saw this. You can't say this is too high. This is the highest I've ever seen. If you want some numbers, home team 14-3 against the spread in the last 17. But it's the Dolphins. They have second-string players out there. I'm going to say the Patriots are going to cover this.
Rosalie, what do you think?
Yeah, we have to remember, though, the Patriots, as dominant as they are, and the fact that they're getting Antonio Brown, and that Miami's tanking, we know all that. But as dominant as the Patriots are, they always seem to struggle when they travel to Miami. Forget covering the spread, right? The Patriots have had trouble just winning in Miami. The Dolphins actually beat New England 34-33 their last season, and nobody thought that was going to happen then either. And since 2012, the Patriots have gone 1-6 straight up in Miami and just 2-5 against the spread. They don't do well down there, but they have been dominant in games where they're favored by 14 points or more. So that's on the upside. And they've gone 6-0 both straight up and against the spread when the point differential is 14 points or more. But another interesting note is over the past 10 years, when we're looking at these really high point spreads, the 17s to the 20s, they've only been covered by the favored team twice over the past 10 years. So that's interesting to me. So I think, yeah, Miami's tanking. Yeah, Patriots are fire. But I'm going to go on history's side here and think that at some point, Patriots are going to pull a lot of their starters, and it's going to be a little bit closer than that.
Very true. Jeff, talk to me.
Look, I'm the idiot who bet Miami +7 last week, so I probably shouldn't even be talking to this point.
Of course.
I could not pull the trigger on Miami after what I saw last week. I mean, I know historically the Pats have done poorly in Miami, but this is a completely different Miami team and not in a good way. So I just take the Patriots.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all your advice and your help.
See you tomorrow at 6.
Let's do it.